Snow fell softly outside the small Los Angeles townhouse, Christmas lights flickering like dying hopes. Claire Whitmore, 6 months pregnant, had just finished setting the table: roast turkey, mashed potatoes, a single candle. She had even placed a small silver frame at the center, holding a sonogram photo of the baby she and Nathan had prayed for. She wanted this night to heal what fame had broken. The front door burst open. Nathan Brooks, her husband, the motivational star from YouTube, entered wearing a designer coat, phone still live streaming. His followers watched as he said into the camera, "Sometimes you have to let go of what holds you back." He pointed the lens toward Claire, who froze mid-smile. "Nathan, what are you doing?" she whispered. He turned the camera off and sighed loudly. "Claire, I can't fake it anymore. You're suffocating me. You, this house, this baby. I need to move on." Her heart pounded. "You're leaving me? On Christmas?" He looked at her belly and shrugged. "You'll be fine. You always have that calm teacher thing. You'll manage." Claire stepped back, nearly losing balance. "You promised." "I promised a life of purpose," he cut her off. "And this," he gestured around the room, "isn't it? I've met someone who understands where I'm going. Her name's Sienna." For a second, time stopped. Outside, children laughed, Christmas music played, and inside, her world shattered quietly. She didn't scream. She only reached for the sonogram photo and clutched it to her chest. Nathan zipped his Louis Vuitton bag. "I'll have my lawyer send papers after the holidays. Don't make this harder." "Harder?" Her voice cracked. "You're walking out on your pregnant wife on Christmas Eve for a model you've known 2 months. He avoided her eyes. "She believes in my future. You just want me to stay ordinary." Claire whispered, "Ordinary isn't failure, Nathan. Betrayal is." He laughed, short and cold. "See? That's why I'm leaving." He opened the door. The cold wind rushed in. "Merry Christmas, Claire." Then he was gone, walking toward a waiting black Mercedes where a woman in red lipstick smiled through the window. The candle flickered once, then died. Claire sank to the floor, her hand over her belly. Tears rolled silently as she whispered, "I'll keep us safe, little one." Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You don't know who you're married to. Don't cry, just wait." Her eyes widened. Who could that be? And how did they know? Morning light crept through the blinds, cold and merciless. The living room still smelled of burnt candles and untouched food. Claire Whitmore sat motionless on the couch, wearing the same sweater from last night, her wedding ring digging into her finger like a shackle. Every detail replayed in her mind. The camera, Nathan's words, the red car waiting outside. It didn't feel real. Her phone buzzed again. Hundreds of notifications flooded in. Nathan's new post was everywhere. "Sometimes love means letting go." The attached photo showed him at a Hollywood Hills party, champagne in hand, Sienna veil clinging to his arm. Claire's stomach turned. The comments below twisted the knife. "Power couple. She upgraded." "That ex-wife looks crazy anyway." She felt her baby kick for the first time that morning. It should have been joy. Instead, she broke into tears. "I'm sorry you have to feel this," she whispered to her belly. The knock on the door startled her. She opened it to find Marjorie, Nathan's mother, perfectly dressed in pearls, her expression colder than the December wind. "Claire, we need to talk," Marjorie said without greeting. "Nathan told me what happened. I warned you this would happen if you didn't support his career." Claire blinked, stunned. "Support? I gave up everything for him. My job, my city, my—" "Stop," Marjorie interrupted. "You always had that quiet arrogance. You thought being sweet would be enough. My son needs a woman who pushes him, not one who drags him down." "Dragged him down?" Claire's voice trembled. "He left me pregnant, Mrs. Brooks, on Christmas." Marjorie sighed. "You'll be fine. You're strong. But Nathan, he's destined for greatness. You should sign whatever papers he sends. End things gracefully before people think you're clinging." Claire stepped back, the ring finally slipping off her swollen finger. "I won't be erased that easily." Marjorie's eyes narrowed. "Then you'll regret it." She turned and left, heels echoing down the porch like the end of a verdict. After the door shut, Claire crumpled to the floor. The unknown text from last night still haunted her. "You don't know who you're married to." Desperate, she opened her laptop. News outlets had already picked up Nathan's bravery. Headlines called him the motivational star who chose freedom. In one clip, he was smiling on a podcast saying, "I had to step away from toxicity to protect my energy." Toxicity. He meant her. The woman who carried his child. The pressure in her chest grew unbearable. She grabbed her coat and stepped outside into the freezing air. The city felt foreign, hostile. She walked aimlessly until she reached a small cafe near Melrose Avenue. The barista recognized her, not as Mrs. Brooks, but from Nathan's vlog series where she'd once appeared, laughing, naive. "You okay, ma'am?" the barista asked gently. Claire nodded weakly. "Just tea, please." She sat by the window, staring at her reflection, pale, broken, but alive. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the same number. "Don't reply. Just check your husband's business records. He used your name." Her heart stopped. She rushed home, grabbed the file cabinet, and pulled out their joint documents. There it was. Whitmore Holdings LLC, a name she hadn't heard in years. Her late father's name, used illegally by Nathan to fund his coaching brand. Claire's breath hitched. She realized this wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. And whoever was texting her knew everything. Her phone buzzed one last time that night. "You don't need to chase revenge. You already own it." She stared out the window, snow beginning to fall again. For the first time since last night, she wasn't crying, she was planning. By the next evening, the world already had a new celebrity couple. Nathan Brooks and Sienna Vale were everywhere. Headlines, talk shows, glossy Instagram stories filled with champagne flutes and sunset selfies. "New year, new love," one headline read. Nathan smiled into the camera, his arm wrapped tightly around Sienna. Claire watched the video from her dim apartment, disbelief turning into nausea. He hadn't just left her. He had erased her. The TV on mute showed a clip from the Daily Pulse, where a reporter said, "Sources confirm Nathan Brooks's ex-wife is reportedly unstable and financially dependent on him. Friends say she refused to move on." Claire's tea mug slipped from her hand and shattered across the floor. "Unstable?" she whispered. "He told them that?" Then her phone rang. Unknown number again. She hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Whitmore," a calm female voice said. "My name is Evelyn Grant. I used to work for your father." Claire froze. "My father?" "Yes," Evelyn continued. "Daniel Whitmore, founder of Whitmore Estates. He left safety measures for you in case someone tried to exploit your name. Nathan Brooks used your late father's dormant company to secure private loans. If he defaults, you take legal responsibility." Claire's blood ran cold. "That can't be true." "I'm afraid it is," Evelyn replied. "But it's not too late. Meet me tomorrow morning. 10 a.m., 5th Avenue, corner office. Bring everything you have." Claire hung up, numb. The city lights flickered outside her window like cruel stars. She remembered Nathan bragging once, "I found an investor who loves legacy names. Whitmore sounds classy." She had laughed then, not knowing he meant her father's name. The next morning, she dressed quietly. Jeans, gray coat, no makeup. On the street, her reflection in every window looked like someone else. A woman stripped bare. A woman no one pitied. 5th Avenue towered around her, all glass and wealth. Inside, Evelyn's office was modern, clean, intimidating. Evelyn herself, elegant, silver hair, sharp eyes behind thin glasses, gestured for Claire to sit. "You remind me of your mother," Evelyn said softly, graceful, but too trusting. Claire swallowed hard. "I didn't know he was using my father's company, I swear." "I believe you," Evelyn replied. "But we need to act before this becomes criminal. You're not just his ex-wife, Claire. You're the legal heir of a billion-dollar trust." Claire stared. "I don't want the money, I just want peace." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Peace comes after justice." She turned her screen toward Claire. Dozens of documents appeared. Nathan's contracts, his fake signatures, the use of Whitmore on multiple shell accounts. Evelyn pointed to one. "This one's the key. It ties him directly to financial fraud." Claire's hands trembled. "If this gets out, his entire brand will collapse." "Good," Evelyn said simply. "He deserves public ruin." Claire looked out the window at the winter sky. "He said I'd never be strong enough to fight him." Evelyn leaned back. "Then let's make him choke on those words." For the first time, Claire almost smiled. But deep inside, a flicker of fear remained. Not for herself, but for the baby. Nathan was reckless, but he wasn't stupid. If he realized she had help, he'd strike back. As she left the building, her phone buzzed again, this time a new message. "He's moving money tonight. Don't stop him yet. Let him bury himself." Claire looked around, heart racing. Someone was clearly watching him and protecting her. But who was it, and what did they really want from her? That night, Los Angeles turned cold, unusually cold. The streets glittered with frost as Claire walked home from the subway, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the envelope Evelyn had given her. Inside were documents proving Nathan's crimes, forged contracts, fake investors, stolen identity. Her breath fogged in the air. Each step echoed with fear and determination. As she reached her street, she noticed a man leaning against a parked car, watching her. His coat was dark, his expression unreadable beneath the streetlight. When their eyes met, he straightened and said quietly, "You shouldn't walk alone this late, Mrs. Whitmore." Her pulse quickened. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" He held up a press badge. "Miles Anderson, investigative journalist. I've been following your husband's activities for months." Claire froze. "You're the one texting me?" He hesitated. "Yes, I needed to make sure you were safe before revealing myself." She didn't know whether to run or thank him. Safe from what? Miles glanced around. "Nathan's in deeper trouble than you think. He's been laundering money through shell charities, including one registered in your name. If it surfaces, you'll be implicated." Claire felt dizzy. "Oh my God, he's using my unborn child's future to clean his crimes." Miles nodded grimly. "Exactly, but you have something he doesn't, legal ownership of the Whitmore trademark. That makes you the detonator." She stared at him. "Why help me? What's in it for you?" For a second, his eyes softened. "Your father once funded my scholarship. I owe him everything. When I saw what Nathan was doing to his daughter, I couldn't stay quiet." Claire blinked back tears. "I didn't know anyone still cared about my father." "He was a good man," Miles said quietly, "and he left behind something better than hotels or money, you." Before she could respond, a black SUV rolled slowly down the street. Miles immediately stepped in front of her. "Get inside your house, now." The SUV stopped, engine humming. A tinted window lowered halfway, and a familiar voice sneered, "You should have stayed quiet, Claire." "Nathan," her body went cold. "Nathan, what are you doing here?" He smiled darkly. "Just checking if my dear wife is holding up. Internet loves a sad story, but lawsuits are ugly. Don't embarrass yourself." Miles took a step forward. "You should leave, Mr. Brooks." Nathan's grin faded. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who's not afraid of cameras," Miles said, pulling out his phone and recording. Nathan cursed and slammed the window shut. The SUV sped off into the night, taillights bleeding red across the snow. Claire exhaled shakily. He knows. He knows I'm fighting back." Miles looked at her with calm resolve. "Then we fight smarter. Let him think you're broken. Meanwhile, we build your case." Inside the house, Claire collapsed onto the couch, trembling. Miles placed a small flash drive on the table. "This contains proof he paid influencers to smear you. Use it when the time's right." Claire looked at the drive, a weapon small enough to fit in her palm. "If I go public, it'll destroy him." Miles nodded. "Yes, but not yet. Let him climb higher first. The fall will hurt more." Claire whispered, almost to herself, "He left me for fame. Let fame be the thing that ruins him." Outside, the wind howled through the empty street. Somewhere far away, Christmas lights flickered. But this time, they looked like fire. The next morning began with rain pounding against the windows. Claire sat at the kitchen table, staring at a single mug of cold coffee. Her eyes were red, her stomach tight from sleeplessness. She had spent most of the night replaying Nathan's smirk, his voice echoing in her head. "Don't embarrass yourself." But it wasn't embarrassment she felt anymore. It was fury. She opened her laptop. Miles's flash drive sat beside it like a ticking bomb. With trembling fingers, she inserted it. Folders appeared. Influencer payments, fake charity reports, NDAs. Claire clicked one, and her husband's digital rot spilled open. Signed contracts, private messages between Nathan and PR agents. Lines of text hit her like a punch. Make her look unstable. Mention hormones, crying fits, sell the story. Her throat tightened. Nathan had manufactured every headline that painted her as the crazy pregnant wife. Just then, the doorbell rang. Claire froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, Evelyn stood there, wearing a black trench coat, umbrella dripping with rain. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore. We need to talk, now." Inside, Evelyn placed a thick folder on the table. Nathan's business partner just confessed to the SEC. They're opening a preliminary investigation into Whitmore Holdings. You need to stay out of sight until we clean your name. Claire frowned. "Stay out of sight? You mean hide?" "For now," Evelyn said firmly. "He'll come for you again. and this time not with words. If he feels cornered, he'll lash out. Claire's heart pounded. I can't disappear. I have a baby coming. I need to protect him. Evelyn softened. I know. That's why I'm moving you somewhere safe. Safe? Claire repeated. Evelyn slid a key across the table. A private property your father once owned in the Hamptons. Secluded. Secure. It's under a different name. You'll stay there until I say otherwise. Claire stared at the key. I don't want to run. Evelyn met her eyes. Then think of it as preparing. Revenge requires patience. For the first time, Claire smiled faintly. You sound like my father. Evelyn sighed. He used to say the same thing about your mother. She fought quietly and always won. Hours later, as Claire packed her suitcase, she felt her baby kick again. We're going home, little one, she whispered. Just not the one he thinks. The drive to the Hamptons was long, the rain turning into flurries of snow. Miles called twice along the way, updating her. Nathan's scrambling, he said. He's trying to liquidate assets before the investigation goes public. Good, Claire replied. Let him dig faster. When she arrived, the estate took her breath away. The Whitmore Beach House stood tall against the gray Atlantic. White columns, shuttered windows, a forgotten relic of her childhood summers. Inside, dust covered the piano her father used to play. She ran her hand over the keys and whispered, I'm sorry I stayed away so long. That night, as the fireplace crackled, her phone buzzed again. A new message, no number attached this time. He's losing control. Stay quiet. Soon, the world will see what he did. Claire set the phone down and stared into the flames. The wind howled outside, echoing like a warning or a promise. She whispered to the fire, let him burn himself first. Then she turned off the lights and held her belly. For the first time, she felt peace, not because the storm had ended, but because she was learning how to control it. By early January, Nathan Brooks was everywhere again, on morning talk shows, podcasts, and YouTube ads preaching about self-liberation. His new brand, Freedom Path Coaching, had gone viral overnight. Sponsors lined up, his follower count exploded, and Sienna Vale smiled beside him like a trophy in every photo. Claire watched from the Hamptons estate, her laptop glowing in the dim light of dawn. She had her father's old Mont Blanc pen beside her, the same one he'd used to sign every Whitmore contract. Evelyn's voice echoed in her mind. Revenge requires patience. Patience wasn't easy. Every post, every headline calling Nathan an icon of resilience made her blood boil. He was selling the story of her pain, and people were buying it. Miles called that afternoon. Claire, you need to see this. He sent her a link to an exclusive Hollywood Life interview. Nathan sat on a plush couch, camera lights reflecting off his perfect smile. I've learned that sometimes, he said, we outgrow the people who can't handle our evolution. The host giggled. You mean your ex-wife? Nathan leaned forward, voice dropping to that fake sincerity fans adored. She wasn't ready for success. She preferred small lives. Quiet, safe. I couldn't shrink to fit that world anymore. Claire's hand shook as she paused the video. Her reflection on the black screen stared back. Tired, furious, resolute. I'm done watching him rewrite the truth, she whispered. Later that night, she walked along the snowy beach behind the estate, wind whipping her hair. The waves roared, fierce and cold. She thought about her father's legacy, how he'd built an empire from nothing, and told her once, never let anyone trade your name for their ambition. Her phone buzzed again. Miles. Good timing, he said. Evelyn and I just found something. One of Nathan's shell charities transferred $500,000 into his personal account last week. It's fraud, Claire. Documented, traceable. Her pulse raced. Can we leak it? Not yet. We need more. But once we go public, it'll be irreversible. You sure you're ready for that? She looked toward the ocean. He made me a ghost. It's time to haunt him back. The next morning, tabloids exploded with new drama. Leaked photos of Nathan and Sienna arguing outside a Beverly Hills restaurant. Sienna's mascara streaked. Nathan shouting something about money gone missing. Claire didn't leak it. Someone else did. Hours later, she got a message from an unknown account. You're not the only one he betrayed. Attached was a file, screenshots of Nathan texting another woman while with Sienna. The scandal grew fast. Social media turned. Fans began asking questions. Miles called again. Claire, this might be our window. Once public opinion cracks, we drop the financial proof. The fall will be spectacular. Claire exhaled slowly. Then let's make it poetic. That night, she wrote a letter to Nathan, not to send, but to read aloud someday. You wanted freedom, I'll give you truth instead, and truth doesn't fade when cameras do. Outside, snow began to fall again over the Atlantic, quiet and relentless. Claire pressed her hand against her stomach. Almost there, baby, she whispered. Almost time to end his show. And somewhere in Los Angeles, Nathan smiled for another camera, not knowing it was the last time the world would ever cheer his name. The Hamptons' house was quiet that morning. Too quiet. The ocean outside looked gray and endless, waves crashing like the pulse of time itself. Claire woke to the sound of seagulls and the faint vibration of her phone. It was a message from Evelyn. Turn on Channel 9. She rubbed her tired eyes, switched on the TV, and froze. Nathan Brooks was crying. On national television. He sat across from a famous talk show host, voice trembling as he said, I made mistakes. I walked away from something I thought was holding me back. But she was the best thing that ever happened to me. Claire nearly laughed, a bitter, broken sound. He had turned his apology into performance art. The host leaned in. Are you saying you still love her? Nathan dabbed his eyes with a tissue. A part of me will always love Claire. I hope she forgives me one day. Claire felt her stomach twist. Forgive you? She whispered at the screen. You built your career on my pain. Her phone buzzed again, this time from Miles. He's playing the sympathy card. It's working. His followers are eating it up. I don't care, she replied. We're almost done. But Miles hesitated. Claire, there's something you should know. Evelyn isn't just helping you, she's protecting her own interests too. She's on the board of Whitmore Estates. If she exposes Nathan, she reclaims full control of your father's assets. Claire froze. You mean, she's using me? I'm not saying she doesn't care, Miles said carefully, but she's not doing this out of kindness alone. That revelation hit harder than she expected. She looked at the folder Evelyn had given her days ago, now lying open on the desk. Her father's legacy, Nathan's crimes, every detail curated and controlled by Evelyn Grant, the woman who seemed too prepared, too precise. Claire whispered, everyone has an angle. Later that afternoon, she drove into town to meet Evelyn in person. The cafe was nearly empty, snow falling outside the window. Evelyn looked up from her espresso as Claire sat down. You look tired, Evelyn said softly. You should rest more. I will, Claire replied, voice steady. After you tell me what you're really after. Evelyn didn't flinch. I'm after justice. No, Claire said. You're after control. Evelyn sighed. Control is how justice survives. Without it, men like Nathan keep winning. Claire stared at her. You sound like him. Something flickered in Evelyn's eyes, pain or regret. Your father trusted me. He knew I'd do what was necessary, even if it made me the villain. You deserve to stand where he stood. For a long moment, they said nothing. Then Claire whispered, if I go down on my own terms, not yours. Evelyn smiled faintly. Good, that's exactly what your father would have said. When Claire returned to the estate, her phone was already lighting up with messages from Miles. He's cracking. The SEC just froze Nathan's accounts. He's panicking, calling investors, blaming everyone but himself. Claire stood by the window, staring out at the violent sea. Her breath fogged the glass. Let him panic, she said quietly. Then another message popped up, from an anonymous number. Tomorrow night, he'll beg for your forgiveness on live TV. Don't answer. Let the world see the truth before you speak. Claire closed her eyes. She could almost hear her father's voice in the wind. Never interrupt a fool while he's destroying himself. And somewhere in Los Angeles, Nathan was rehearsing his next apology, unaware that the stage beneath him was already cracking. By the next evening, Los Angeles buzzed with anticipation. Nathan Brooks was set to appear on a live primetime special, The Power of Forgiveness. Every major outlet promoted it. The tagline read, A Man's Redemption After Heartbreak. Claire sat in the Hamptons estate, bundled in a wool sweater, the TV muted. Snow swirled outside and the fireplace cast a faint glow over her anxious face. Miles called just before the show began. You ready? He asked. For what? Claire murmured. For the world to finally see who he really is. Miles explained the plan. The SEC's investigation will go public within minutes. Evelyn's legal team timed it with the broadcast. The moment he starts preaching forgiveness, the news will break live on every ticker. Claire hesitated. And what happens to me? You don't speak, Miles said gently. Not yet. Silence will be louder than any word you could say. When the show started, Nathan walked onto the stage wearing a navy suit, smiling like the world still belonged to him. The crowd cheered. Sienna sat in the audience, tearful, perfectly lit for sympathy. He began, voice dripping with contrition. Tonight, I want to talk about love, loss, and the courage to move forward. My ex-wife, Claire, he paused, waiting for applause. She was a good woman, but sometimes we break what we don't understand. Claire's jaw clenched. The arrogance wrapped in fake humility made her stomach twist. Miles's voice came through the phone. Wait for it. On screen, Nathan's speech continued. He spread his hands dramatically. If she's watching, I want her to know I forgive her for everything. And then it happened. The studio lights flickered, and the giant news ticker beneath the broadcast screen lit up. Breaking. Nathan Brooks under federal investigation for fraud and misuse of charity funds. Gasps rippled through the audience. The host blinked in confusion, earpiece buzzing. Cameras kept rolling. Nathan froze mid-sentence, smile faltering. What's happening? He stammered. Behind the scenes, producers scrambled, cutting to commercial. But the internet was faster. Within minutes, screenshots of the broadcast flooded Twitter and Reddit. Fans turned on him instantly. The hashtag shifted from Forgive Nathan to Expose Nathan Brooks. Miles laughed softly through the phone. There it is, the fall of a hero. Claire didn't smile. She felt no joy, only a deep, hollow calm. He's not done yet, she said. He'll try to spin this. He always does. Miles's tone darkened. Not this time. We have video proof of him moving charity funds into his personal account. When the press connects that, it's over. Hours later, news anchors dissected the collapse of Nathan Brooks's empire. Sponsors withdrew. Brands deleted collaborations. Sienna vanished from social media entirely. In one broadcast, an anchor read aloud, documents confirm that the fraudulent companies were registered under the name of his wife, Claire Whitmore, without her consent. That one line changed everything. The world realized she wasn't the villain, she was the victim. Her inbox overflowed with apologies, media requests, even messages from women saying, "Thank you for surviving him for us." But Claire didn't respond. She wasn't done yet. As dawn broke over the Hamptons, she walked to the porch, phone in hand. Miles texted, "The gala's confirmed. 1 week. You'll make your first public appearance. Evelyn's arranging it." Claire stared at the ocean, gray and endless. 1 week, she whispered. Let's end it where it began. And somewhere across the country, Nathan screamed at his shattered reflection in a hotel mirror, while the world he built on lies crumbled in front of millions. The snow had turned to rain the morning Claire received the invitation that would change everything. A white envelope, embossed with gold letters, read, "The Whitmore Legacy Foundation Gala, the Ritz-Carlton, New York City." Evelyn's handwriting below was simple but powerful. It's time. Claire sat by the window, her baby's soft kicks pulsing beneath her hand. The Hamptons looked peaceful, but her thoughts roared. Nathan had been publicly humiliated. Yes, but he wasn't finished. His followers still defended him, calling the fraud a setup. He was already teasing a comeback video. She couldn't let that happen. When Miles arrived later that day, he found her standing before her late father's mirror, wearing a plain gray dress, hair undone. "You're quiet," he said. Claire met his gaze in the reflection. "Quiet doesn't mean weak." "I've been planning." Miles smiled slightly. "Then let's hear it." She turned, holding a folder thick with documents. "Nathan's accounts may be frozen, but not Sienna's. He funneled money through her brand. We exposed that at the gala, live, with evidence. No edits, no spin. When the cameras roll, the world sees the full truth." Miles nodded slowly. "Risky. Brutal. I like it." Evelyn arrived that evening, dressed in a tailored black coat, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. "You're going public?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes," Claire replied. "But on my terms. I'm not coming as his victim. I'm coming as the owner of Whitmore Estates, announcing the foundation my father dreamed of, one that protects women from financial manipulation." Evelyn's lips curved. "You understand power now. I'm proud of you." "Don't be proud," Claire said quietly. "Be ready." The next few days blurred into preparation. Tailors fitted her for a midnight blue gown from Dior's private collection. Stylists from New York came to the Hamptons, their chatter bouncing off the grand staircase. Yet beneath the glamour, Claire stayed focused. Every glance at her reflection reminded her why she was doing this. Not for revenge, but for closure. Miles set up the technical side. The live stream, the encrypted files, the timed video drop exposing Nathan's crimes in sequence. "It'll hit the web exactly when you walk on stage," he said. "Every major outlet will mirror it. He won't have time to hide." Meanwhile, Evelyn secured the guest list. CEOs, journalists, politicians, all of Manhattan's elite. The same people Nathan once tried to impress. 2 nights before the gala, Claire couldn't sleep. She walked along the beach, moonlight glimmering across the waves. "I'm scared," she admitted softly when Miles joined her. "Good," he said. "Fear means you still care, but you've already survived the worst. Tomorrow's just the echo." Claire smiled faintly. "You sound like a journalist quoting himself." "Maybe," Miles replied, grinning, "but I mean it." When she returned to the house, another message waited on her phone. No name, just words. "He's trying to get into the gala. Don't stop him. Let him watch." Claire stared at the message, her breath steady. "Perfect," she whispered. On the day of the event, the sky over Manhattan was crisp and gold. The Ritz-Carlton glowed with chandeliers and murmurs of wealth. Guests in tuxedos whispered her name before she even arrived. In a black SUV outside the entrance, Nathan sat watching the red carpet through tinted glass, fury twisting his face. "She thinks she's untouchable," he muttered. Inside, as the orchestra played and cameras flashed, Claire stepped into the light. The crowd turned. Her silence filled the room like thunder. And somewhere in that glittering crowd, Nathan Brooks walked straight into the trap she had built with perfect grace. The ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton shimmered with gold and glass. Journalists moved like predators in tuxedos, flashes cutting through the air like lightning. The orchestra's soft strings filled the room as Manhattan's elite toasted champagne, unaware that history was about to rewrite itself on that stage. Claire Whitmore stood behind the velvet curtain, breathing slowly. The midnight blue gown flowed around her like liquid night, her hair pinned in soft waves. Evelyn adjusted the microphone on her collar. "Are you ready?" she asked. Claire nodded. "Ready enough." Miles stood a few feet away, eyes on his phone, live feed already running. "The files are primed," he whispered. "The moment you speak your father's name, the truth goes live worldwide." Claire exhaled, feeling the baby's gentle movement beneath her ribs. "Then let's give the world something worth watching." The lights dimmed. The announcer's voice echoed through the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mrs. Claire Whitmore." Applause rippled like thunder as she stepped onto the stage. The crowd rose to its feet, some in admiration, others in shock. Cameras zoomed in. Somewhere near the back, Nathan Brooks froze mid-step, unable to look away. Claire smiled politely. "Good evening. Tonight we celebrate the legacy of my late father, Daniel Whitmore. A man who believed power means nothing without integrity." Her voice carried across the room, calm but commanding. "For too long, people like my father built worlds, only to watch them fall into the hands of men who mistake ambition for cruelty." A murmur rippled through the audience. Evelyn watched from the wings, perfectly still. Claire continued, "My father once told me, truth is a mirror. You can hide from it, but eventually it shows your reflection." Miles hit enter. The live stream ignited across every screen in the room. Behind Claire, the massive LED display flickered from the Whitmore logo to video clips. Nathan signing fake contracts, transferring charity funds, and laughing on recorded calls. Gasps erupted. Cameras spun toward Nathan, whose face drained of color. "This," Claire said, turning toward the screen, "is what happens when greed hides behind inspiration. When a man sells lies wrapped in hope." Nathan shouted from the crowd, "You set me up." Claire's gaze didn't waver. "No, Nathan. You set yourself up the moment you used my father's name to build your empire of deceit." The audience shifted, their whispers sharp and electric. The host, pale, tried to regain control. "Mrs. Whitmore, perhaps we should." But Claire raised her hand. "No need. Justice doesn't need moderation." Security began moving toward Nathan. He tried to push past, yelling, "You can't do this! I made you famous." Claire's expression was almost kind. "You made yourself infamous." The crowd gasped again as federal agents entered discreetly through the side doors, badges flashing. Within moments, Nathan was surrounded. His voice cracked as he screamed, "This isn't over." Claire met his eyes one last time. "It is for you." The room erupted in applause, raw, cathartic, endless. Reporters rushed forward, but Claire stepped back, tears glimmering in her eyes. She whispered into the microphone, voice trembling yet steady, "This is for every woman who was told silence is survival. Sometimes, survival is speaking first." She turned and walked off stage as the orchestra swelled, the screens behind her now showing the Foundation's new logo, Whitmore Legacy, empowering women to reclaim their voice. Miles met her backstage, eyes shining. "It's done," he said softly. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Your father would have been proud." Claire looked out at the roaring crowd beyond the curtain. "No," she whispered. "He'd say this is only the beginning." And as Nathan was led away in handcuffs, Claire stepped into the flash of cameras, not as a broken wife, but as a woman reborn. The morning after the gala, Manhattan woke up to chaos. Every major outlet carried the same headline: Nathan Brooks arrested at charity gala, fraud, embezzlement, and lies exposed by ex-wife. The footage had gone viral overnight, over 20 million views in 8 hours. Comment sections overflowed with shock, outrage, and a new wave of admiration for Claire Whitmore. But inside the quiet suite at the Ritz-Carlton, Claire didn't feel like a hero. She sat by the window, wearing one of the hotel's white robes, her hair undone, a cup of untouched tea beside her. The city below buzzed, but she felt suspended between relief and grief. Miles entered, holding his phone. "You've officially broken the internet," he said with a tired smile. "Every news network's calling you the silent heiress." Claire gave a small laugh, soft but hollow. "Silent? That's ironic." He sat across from her. "They're offering interviews. CNN, Good Morning America, even Oprah's team reached out." "I don't want any of it," she said quietly. "I just want this to end." Miles's eyes softened. "It will. But first, you have to choose what kind of ending you want." Before she could answer, Evelyn walked in, poised as ever, a stack of papers in hand. "Claire, I need your signature on the statement for the board. The Foundation's stock just jumped 20% overnight. We can redirect the profits into the legacy fund." Claire stared at the documents. "It's always numbers with you, isn't it?" Evelyn looked surprised. "This is what your father built it for, impact through wealth." "No," Claire said softly. "He built it for dignity. Somewhere along the line, people forgot that." The tension hung heavy between them. Finally, Evelyn exhaled and placed the papers down. "Then tell me what you want to do." Claire stood, gazing out at the skyline. "I want peace, and I want to raise my child somewhere no one knows my name." Miles frowned. "You're thinking of leaving?" "Yes," she said simply. "Once the trial's over, I'm done with this city. Maybe I'll go back to teaching art, maybe somewhere quiet, Seattle, maybe Vermont, just not here." Evelyn's expression softened. "If that's what you want, I'll make sure you have the freedom to disappear." Just then, Miles's phone buzzed. He frowned at the screen. "Well, this is new." Nathan just released a statement from county jail. Claire's chest tightened. "What does it say?" Miles read aloud. "My wife orchestrated a public smear campaign against me. She's using her father's wealth to ruin my career. I'll fight until my last breath." Claire closed her eyes. "He still doesn't get it." "He never will," Evelyn said firmly. "But the world already picked a side, and it's not his." Hours later, Claire met with her lawyers. The official separation of assets was finalized. She retained full control of Whitmore Estates and the Foundation, while Nathan's remaining accounts were seized by the state. For once, the numbers worked in her favor. When she returned to the suite that evening, the sunset painted the sky in rose and gold. Miles was packing up his laptop, ready to leave for his next story. "Heading out already?" she asked. He smiled. "You don't need me anymore, Claire. You've written your own headline." She hesitated. "Thank you, Miles, for everything." He nodded. "For what it's worth, your father was right about you." Claire smiled faintly. "He said a lot of things. I'm still learning which ones were true." As night fell, she placed her hand over her belly and whispered, "We did it, baby. It's over." But deep down, she knew the storm was quiet now, not gone. And tomorrow, she'd have to decide what kind of life rises after fire. 3 weeks passed. Manhattan had already moved on to a new scandal, a new face to devour. But for Claire Whitmore, time moved slower. The storm had ended, but the silence that followed was almost heavier. She was still at the Ritz-Carlton, resting under doctor's orders. The pregnancy had taken a toll. Stress had nearly sent her into early labor. Every morning, she sat on the balcony overlooking Central Park, the city lights blinking like restless stars. She should have felt victorious. She had won. Nathan was in jail awaiting trial, his empire burned to ashes. But winning didn't feel the way she imagined. Victory was lonely. Miles visited one afternoon with 2 coffees and his usual crooked grin. "You look better," he said, handing her a cup. "Better is a stretch," she murmured, smiling faintly. "But thank you." He sat across from her. "You've had 3 networks call again today. They want exclusives, your truth, your healing journey, your power comeback. You sure you want to turn it all down?" Claire looked at him steadily. "The world already had enough of my story. I'd rather start living it." Miles nodded. "Then what's next?" She sighed. "I've been thinking about Vermont. I found an old farmhouse for sale, quiet, surrounded by pines. My father used to take me there as a kid. Maybe it's time to go back." He leaned back, watching her. "You really think you can just disappear?" "Disappear?" she repeated softly. "No. Just exist without performing." Miles smiled. "That's rarer than fame." They sat in silence for a while, watching the soft snowfall. For the first time in months, Claire felt calm. She wasn't the headline anymore. She was a person again. Later that night, as she packed, Evelyn stopped by. The older woman looked tired, though she hid it behind her usual poise. "So it's true," she said. "You're leaving." Claire nodded. "Tomorrow morning. I can't raise my child in a city built on noise." Evelyn's expression softened. "Your father would understand. But know this, Claire, if you ever want your seat at the table, it's yours. You earned it." Claire gave a sad smile. "I don't need a table anymore. I'm building a home." They hugged for the first time. It wasn't warm exactly, but it was real. After Evelyn left, Claire sat alone among half-packed boxes. She looked around the room, the hotel suite that had witnessed her fall and rise. On the nightstand sat the Mont Blanc pen, still gleaming. She picked it up and whispered, "Thank you, Dad." Her phone buzzed once more, an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "For when you're ready to forgive yourself." Attached was a single file, a video of her father speaking at a long-forgotten conference years ago. On screen, he smiled warmly, his voice steady and kind. "Power means nothing unless it protects someone who can't protect themselves. If my daughter ever watches this, I hope she remembers. Our name isn't about wealth, it's about grace under fire." Tears rolled down Claire's cheeks. She whispered to the screen, "I remember now." The next morning, as dawn broke over the city, she slipped out of the hotel quietly. No cameras, no reporters, just her, a suitcase, and a promise. Miles stood by the car waiting to drive her to Vermont. "Ready?" he asked. She looked up at the sunrise spreading gold across the skyline. "I think I finally am." As they drove away from Manhattan, the city faded in the rearview mirror, leaving behind the ashes of who she used to be. And somewhere far from the noise, a new chapter was waiting to be written. Not by the media, but by her own hands. The road to Vermont stretched endlessly through snow and silence. Pine trees stood tall, like guardians of a forgotten world. Claire watched them pass by through the foggy car window, her hand resting gently on her belly. The hum of the tires and the rhythm of her child's heartbeat blended into one calm melody. Miles drove quietly, letting the stillness speak for them. Every so often, he'd glance in the mirror to check on her. "You sure about this?" he asked. Claire smiled faintly. For the first time in years, yes. When they arrived, the farmhouse was exactly as she remembered. Weathered white walls, a porch wrapped around the front, and a view of the mountains that seemed to go on forever. The last time she'd been there, she was 12, running barefoot through the grass while her father painted the sunrise. Now the air smelled of pine and distant wood smoke. The place felt untouched by fame, scandal, or betrayal. "This is peaceful," Miles said as he stepped out, crunching snow underfoot. "It's home," Claire whispered. Inside, the rooms were filled with dust and memories. Her father's easel still stood by the window, a half-finished canvas waiting for its artist to return. She ran her fingers over the old paintbrushes and smiled through tears. "He never finished it." "Maybe you will," Miles said softly. They spent the afternoon cleaning. Miles chopped firewood while Claire unpacked boxes of clothes and baby things. The rhythm of ordinary life soothed her. By sunset, a small fire crackled in the hearth, filling the house with warmth. Over dinner, soup and bread from the small local market, they talked about everything except the past. Miles told stories from his early journalism days, chasing politicians through DC hallways. Claire laughed for the first time in months. When the laughter faded, he looked at her seriously. You could start fresh here, you know. Nobody knows you're that Claire Whitmore. You'd just be another woman raising a baby in Vermont. That's the plan, she said, smiling. No cameras, no drama, just us. Miles hesitated. You sure you want to do this alone? She met his gaze. I've been alone for a long time, Miles. The difference is, now it's by choice. Outside, snow began to fall again, thick and soft. The world seemed to slow down. Claire walked to the porch after dinner, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. The night air was crisp, the stars sharp against the dark sky. Miles joined her quietly. You know, he said, when I first met you, you looked like someone who'd forgotten how to breathe. Now you look like someone who finally can. Claire smiled, eyes glistening. I guess I finally remembered what air feels like. A moment passed in silence. Then her phone buzzed with a new message. No name, just words glowing in the dark. He's trying to reach you from prison. Don't respond. Her heart skipped. Miles saw her expression. Nathan? Claire nodded. He doesn't get to have another word in my life. She turned off the phone and placed it face down on the porch railing. Miles smiled. Good, that's the right kind of silence. As the snow piled higher, Claire closed her eyes and whispered to the wind, We're safe now. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, she truly believed it. But deep in the quiet Vermont night, far from the cameras and chaos, a storm was still forming. One final test before peace could last. Winter deepened in Vermont, wrapping the farmhouse in white silence. Days passed quietly. Claire cooked simple meals, painted by the window, and read aloud to the baby kicking inside her. The rhythm of normal life felt sacred. Each morning, she'd walk to the mailbox at the end of the long driveway, collecting letters from the foundation Evelyn still ran in her name. The world beyond her snowy hills felt like a dream she had finally woken from. Until the morning, the dream cracked. She opened the mailbox and froze. Among the usual bills and newsletters lay a thick, unmarked envelope. No return address. Her name was written in neat block letters, Claire Whitmore Brooks. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a photograph, Nathan in prison, sitting across a visitor's table, smiling. On the back of the photo, a note written in his unmistakable scrawl, You took everything from me, but you can't erase what's mine. Her pulse pounded in her ears. For a moment, the world tilted. Then she turned the envelope upside down. Another paper fell out, a printed copy of a legal petition. Nathan Brooks was suing for paternal visitation rights. The air seemed to vanish. No, she whispered. No, no, no. That night, she couldn't sleep. The wind howled outside like an omen. Miles found her in the kitchen, staring at the document. Let me guess, he said quietly. He's trying to drag you back into his circus. Claire nodded. He wants to claim the baby from prison. Miles cursed under his breath. He's desperate. He's lost everything, so he's clinging to the only thing left, control. He doesn't want the baby, Claire said bitterly. He just wants to keep me in chains. Miles leaned against the counter. Then we fight again. Evelyn will know what to do. But Claire shook her head. No, not this time. I'm done letting other people fix my life. I'll handle him myself. 2 days later, Claire drove alone to Burlington, to a courthouse surrounded by gray stone and frost. Inside, the air smelled of paper and fear. Her lawyer explained the situation. Nathan's claim was a publicity stunt. He couldn't win, but he could make noise. He's manipulating the system, the lawyer said. If we ignore it, it dies quietly. Claire exhaled. Then that's what we'll do. She stepped out into the cold sunlight, pulling her scarf tighter. Across the street, a photographer raised his camera. Flash, flash. The world still watched. That night, back at the farmhouse, she painted to calm her nerves. She picked up one of her father's unfinished canvases and began adding color, soft blues and golds. When she was done, the image showed a woman standing in snow, holding a child, light blooming behind her. She smiled through tears. We'll be fine, she whispered to her belly. He can't reach us here. Just then, headlights swept across the window. A car slowed outside her gate. She tensed, heart racing, but when the door opened, it was only Evelyn. I heard, Evelyn said, stepping inside, snow clinging to her coat. You handled it perfectly. I didn't handle it for me, Claire replied. I handled it for him, to show our son what strength looks like. Evelyn smiled. Then your father would have been proud. As the two women stood by the fire, snow fell harder, sealing the world in quiet white. For once, Claire didn't feel fear. Nathan's shadow was still out there, but it no longer frightened her, because she finally understood. Shadows only exist where there's light. Snow covered the Vermont farmhouse like a blanket of quiet mercy. The world outside seemed frozen in peace, but inside, Claire Whitmore was pacing the floor, one hand gripping her belly, the other clutching her phone. The contractions had started at dawn. They were coming faster now. Miles's voice echoed through the speaker. "I'm on my way, Claire. Don't move. The hospital's 30 minutes out. Just breathe." "I am breathing," she snapped, then immediately laughed through the pain. "Sorry. I think the little one's impatient." "Can you hold on?" he asked. She looked out at the swirling snow. "I've been holding on my whole life, Miles. I can do this." 10 minutes later, headlights appeared in the distance. Miles burst through the door, breathless, coat dusted white. "Let's go." Evelyn had already called ahead, arranging a private suite at the regional hospital. The drive through the snow was slow, tense. Every bump sent a sharp ache through Claire's body, but she held Miles's hand the entire time. "Almost there," he kept whispering. When they arrived, nurses rushed her in. The room was warm, filled with soft beeping and the scent of antiseptic. Claire changed into a gown, sweat beading her forehead. The doctor, Dr. Patel, a calm woman with kind eyes, checked her vitals. "You're ready," she said. "It's time." Hours blurred together, pain, breath, and flashes of memory. Nathan's betrayal, her father's voice, the quiet Vermont nights, all melted into one long storm. Then through the haze, a cry broke the silence. High, beautiful, alive. Claire's tears came instantly. The nurse placed the tiny bundle in her arms. "Congratulations, Mrs. Whitmore. It's a boy." For a moment everything stopped. The room faded away. There was only the warmth of her child against her chest, the heartbeat she'd waited months to hear. "Hey, little one," she whispered. "You made it." Miles stood quietly in the corner, hands clasped, trying not to cry. When Claire looked up at him, smiling through exhaustion, he stepped closer. "He's perfect," he said. "He's strong," she replied softly, "just like his grandfather." The baby stirred, tiny fingers curling around her thumb. She kissed his forehead. "Welcome to the world, Ethan Whitmore." Outside, the storm had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, pouring gold through the hospital window. Hours later, after the nurses left, Evelyn arrived. She stood at the doorway, her sharp composure melting as she saw Claire holding the baby. "May I?" she asked quietly. Claire nodded. Evelyn approached slowly, taking Ethan into her arms. "You have your father's eyes," she whispered, though whether she meant Daniel or Miles, no one could tell. "Thank you," Claire said, "for everything." Evelyn smiled faintly. "You don't owe me thanks. You owed yourself this peace." Miles glanced at the television in the corner. A headline scrolled across the screen: "Nathan Brooks sentenced to 8 years in federal prison." Claire noticed, then turned away. "It's over," she said simply. Evelyn looked at her. "What will you do now?" Claire smiled down at her son. "Live. That's all I've ever wanted." As evening fell, Miles stood by the window watching snow glitter under the streetlights. "You know," he said, "you've got that look again." "What look?" Claire asked sleepily. "The look of someone who just rewrote her story." Claire chuckled softly, eyes closing as she rocked Ethan. "Maybe I did, or maybe it's just beginning." And as night settled over Vermont, the woman who once lost everything finally held the only thing that ever truly mattered, her new beginning. Spring crept slowly over Vermont. Snow melted into silver streams that wound through the fields, and the farmhouse smelled of pine and baby powder. Claire's days were simple now, feeding Ethan, sketching while he napped, and writing small journal entries she never planned to publish. Peace had finally settled into her bones. Then one morning, the mail arrived with something unexpected: a thick, official-looking envelope stamped with the seal of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Claire froze. Miles noticed her expression as he set down the groceries. "What is it?" She turned the envelope over. The return address read, "Nathan Brooks, inmate number 49217. Miles frowned. "You don't have to read it." "I need to," Claire said quietly. "Not for him, for me." She opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, handwritten in Nathan's familiar, sharp handwriting. "Claire, I don't expect you to forgive me. Maybe I just need to feel like someone still hears me. Everything's gone, the money, the followers, the noise. They all left when you did. The cell is quiet. Too quiet." I finally know what silence sounds like. They tell me our son was born. I don't deserve to know his name. I only hope he never grows up to be me. You won, Claire. You always had something I never did. Truth. Take care of him. Don't make him hate me. Make him nothing like me. Nathan. Claire read it twice, her hands trembling. For a long moment she said nothing. Miles broke the silence. You okay? She folded the letter neatly and placed it on the table. No, she said softly. But maybe that's okay. He studied her face. You could ignore it. You don't owe him a response. I won't reply, she said. But I'll keep it. Someday Ethan might ask about his father. When that day comes, he'll see the truth. Not a villain, not a victim. Just a man who lost his way. Miles nodded slowly. That's kinder than I'd be. Claire smiled faintly. Kindness isn't for him. It's for me. Later that afternoon, she took Ethan for a walk along the edge of the forest. The air smelled of damp earth and lilacs. Sunlight filtered through the trees, and for the first time she realized she wasn't afraid of shadows anymore. As she pushed the stroller, she found herself whispering, You'll never have to unlearn love the way I did, little one. I promise you that. That night, after Ethan was asleep, she sat by the window, watching the stars appear one by one. The letter lay beside her on the desk, illuminated by the lamplight. She picked up her father's old Mont Blanc pen and wrote her own words on a blank page. Dear Nathan, I don't hate you anymore. I don't love you either. I've built something you couldn't. Peace. Ethan will grow up knowing strength doesn't come from breaking others, but from rebuilding yourself. I hope you find a piece of that where you are. She didn't sign it. She folded it once, then burned it in the fireplace. The paper curled, turned black, and vanished. Miles found her staring into the flames. You let him go, he said quietly. Claire nodded. Finally. Outside, rain began to fall softly against the windows, washing the last traces of winter away. And as she watched the fire fade to embers, Claire realized forgiveness wasn't a gift to Nathan, it was freedom for herself. Summer came early to Vermont that year. The fields around the farmhouse were a deep, endless green, and the air smelled of wildflowers and rain. Claire spent most mornings barefoot on the porch with Ethan asleep against her chest. He was 6 months old now, full of laughter and stubborn eyes that reminded her of both herself and the man she used to love. Peace, however, was a fragile thing. One afternoon, as she rocked Ethan to sleep, her phone buzzed with an unexpected call. The screen showed a number she didn't recognize, New York area code. She hesitated before answering. Mrs. Whitmore? A man's voice asked. This is Detective Hale from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I'm calling regarding Nathan Brooks. Claire's pulse tightened. What about him? The detective paused. He's dead, ma'am. Suicide. It happened 2 nights ago. The world seemed to tilt. She didn't drop the phone, didn't cry. She just sat very still, the sound of the wind filling the silence between heartbeats. I see, she said finally. Thank you for letting me know. We found a final note addressed to you, Hale continued gently. Would you like it forwarded? Claire closed her eyes. No, burn it. That night she stood by the window long after Ethan fell asleep. The crickets hummed and the world felt heavy but quiet. She wasn't sure how to feel. Grief? Relief? Nothing seemed to fit. Miles arrived 2 days later. He had already heard the news. You don't have to pretend this doesn't hurt, he said softly. I'm not pretending, Claire replied. I just don't know what kind of hurt this is. He looked at her long enough to understand. Maybe it's the kind that doesn't have a name, she nodded. He was a monster to me, Miles. But he was still human, and part of me will always wish he had become something better. They sat outside as the sky turned orange with sunset. Miles broke the silence first. You know, you could tell Ethan the truth one day, or you could let this end here. Let the ghost stay buried. Claire sighed. No, he'll know, but not yet. When he's old enough, I'll tell him that his father fell, but his mother stood back up. Miles smiled faintly. That's one way to honor him, by not letting his story end in darkness. A few weeks later, a package arrived. Inside was a sealed legal notice. Nathan's remaining royalties and possessions had been released to his next of kin. Claire almost sent it back unopened, but something made her look. Inside was a small flash drive labeled Legacy. Miles helped her plug it into her laptop. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a video, just a folder full of letters Nathan had written from prison to people he'd wronged. Investors, employees, even Sienna Vale. They were apologies, handwritten and scanned. He was trying, Miles said quietly. Claire nodded, tears in her eyes. Too late, but maybe not too late to mean something. She closed the laptop and exhaled. We'll make something good out of this. The next day, she contacted Evelyn and arranged for a new program through the Whitmore Foundation, a fund for rehabilitation and mental health support for men leaving prison. When the papers were signed, Evelyn looked at her with quiet admiration. You're turning ashes into soil. Claire smiled. That's what growth is. That night, she stood on the porch again, Ethan asleep in her arms, stars blanketing the sky. Your father's gone, she whispered, but his shadow won't live in you. And as fireflies danced through the summer dark, Claire finally felt what peace truly meant, not forgetting the ghosts but learning to let them rest. Autumn returned to Vermont wrapped in red and gold. The air carried that crisp sweetness only fall could bring. It had been nearly a year since the gala, a year since Claire Whitmore's name had dominated every screen, every whisper. Now she was just Claire again. No cameras, no scandals, no noise. Only a mother, a woman, and a survivor learning how to live. Ethan was almost one, already wobbling on tiny legs across the porch. Every time he laughed, it echoed through the house like sunlight. Claire watched him chase fallen leaves, her sketchbook balanced on her knees. For the first time in forever, her art wasn't a way to hide from pain, it was a way to celebrate the quiet after it. One afternoon, as she painted, a familiar car pulled into the long gravel driveway. Miles stepped out, wearing his usual leather jacket and that grin that always seemed half amused, half worried. Did I interrupt the Vermont piece? He teased. You're late, she said, smiling. I thought journalists never sleep. I retired, he said with a wink. Or maybe I finally realized some stories aren't mine to tell anymore. He handed her a folder. Evelyn sent this. She wanted your signature for the new foundation branch, the one for trauma recovery. You've got schools, counselors, volunteers. It's growing faster than we thought. Claire looked through the papers, humbled. I didn't expect this to turn into something real. Miles chuckled. Claire, people watched you turn your worst pain into purpose. That's as real as it gets. They sat on the porch together, the silence easy between them. The leaves whispered above and the smell of apple pie drifted from the kitchen. You ever think about going back? Miles asked. To New York? She said. No. That city saw my worst version. I'd rather grow new roots here. He nodded. You've changed. So have you, she said, studying him. You're not chasing headlines anymore. He smiled. Maybe I found one worth keeping. For a moment, the air between them felt different. Not heavy like before, but gentle, warm. Claire looked away, cheeks flushed. You shouldn't say things like that unless you mean them. I always mean what I say, he replied quietly. Before she could answer, Ethan's giggle broke the tension. The little boy crawled toward Miles, clutching his pant leg. Miles lifted him easily. Strice the baby grinning in delight. Claire laughed. He likes you. Smart kid, Miles said softly, meeting her eyes. As the sun began to set, painting the mountains in gold, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. The past no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a lesson. After dinner, she walked out to the porch alone, wrapped in a shawl. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying whispers of memory. Her father's voice, Evelyn's advice, even the ghost of Nathan's last words. She didn't hate any of it anymore. Miles joined her quietly, 2 mugs of tea in his hands. You know, he said, handing her one, for someone who swore off attention, you've inspired half the country. I didn't mean to, she said. That's what makes it powerful. They stood in silence, looking up at the stars scattered across the Vermont sky. Claire turned to him and said, For the first time, I don't feel like a story. I feel like a life. Miles smiled, his voice soft. Good, because you deserve to live it. She exhaled slowly, her eyes on the horizon. Maybe this is what love is supposed to look like. Quiet, safe, and real. And as the last light of day faded, Claire Whitmore, the woman the world once pitied, finally became the woman who came back to life. By the next spring, the snow had melted into soft rivers, and the mountains around Claire's farmhouse gleamed under the Vermont sun. Life had settled into something beautifully ordinary. Morning walks with Ethan, phone calls with Evelyn about the growing foundation, and the gentle company of Miles, who had become as much a part of their days as the sunrise itself. But one morning, as Claire poured coffee, Evelyn called with a tone Claire hadn't heard in months. Businesslike, urgent. "Claire," she said, "they're dedicating a new wing at the Whitmore Children's Hospital in your father's honor. The board wants you to attend. It's in Manhattan." Claire froze. "New York?" "Yes," Evelyn replied. "It's been over a year. You're ready. It's not about him anymore. It's about you, your father, and what you've rebuilt." That night, Claire sat by the fire after putting Ethan to bed. Miles watched her from across the room. "You're thinking about it," he said. "I swore I'd never go back," she murmured. "Then don't go back to the past," he said gently. "Go forward into the place where it happened." 2 weeks later, she was on a train heading south. Ethan slept peacefully beside her, and Miles sat across the aisle, pretending to read but clearly watching her. The closer they got to the city, the tighter the air felt in her chest, the skyline like a ghost rising from the horizon. When they arrived, Manhattan looked the same but different. Brighter, maybe, or perhaps she was the one who'd changed. The Whitmore Hospital stood tall on Fifth Avenue, its marble facade gleaming in the afternoon sun. Cameras waited outside, though fewer than before. As she stepped onto the sidewalk, the hum of the city hit her, the honking, the voices, the flash of phones. For a heartbeat, she almost turned back. Then Ethan laughed, waving at a pigeon that had landed nearby. Claire smiled. "You're right," she whispered. "We're not afraid of noise anymore." Inside, the gala was elegant but simple. Photographs of Daniel Whitmore lined the walls, the young visionary, the man who built something lasting. The new wing bore a golden plaque that read, "In honor of Daniel Whitmore and the strength he passed on to his daughter." Claire stood before it, tears in her eyes. Evelyn appeared beside her, voice soft. "He'd be proud, you know." "I hope so," Claire said. "For a while, I forgot who I was beyond what people said. I think I finally remember now." During the ceremony, a journalist approached hesitantly. "Mrs. Whitmore, may I ask how it feels to be back in the city after everything?" Claire smiled calmly. "It feels like forgiveness," she said. "Not for anyone else, for myself." The reporter blinked, caught off guard. "And what would you say to the women who followed your story?" Claire glanced toward Ethan, who was playing quietly near Miles. "That surviving isn't the end. Healing is." Applause followed her words, not loud or frenzied, but real. For the first time, the cameras didn't feel like a threat. They felt like witnesses to her peace. Later that night, after the event ended, she walked out to the hospital terrace overlooking the glittering skyline. Miles joined her, hands in his pockets. "You did it," he said simply. Claire looked at the city that once broke her. "No," she said, smiling. "We did." He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. As the lights of Manhattan shimmered below them, Claire realized something profound. The city hadn't changed. She had. And this time, she was the one standing in the light. The morning after the hospital dedication, the sun rose over Manhattan in soft gold. The city glowed, traffic humming, taxis honking, the rhythm of life pulsing below. From the penthouse suite Evelyn had arranged, Claire stood by the window with a cup of tea, Ethan babbling on the floor beside her. For the first time, she didn't look at New York as a battlefield. It was simply a city again, noisy, alive, forgiven. Miles stirred awake on the couch. "You're up early," he murmured, stretching. Claire smiled faintly. "I wanted to see it one more time before we go." He walked over beside her. "You sure you want to leave? You could stay. The foundation, the press, they all adore you now." She shook her head. "I didn't come back to stay. I came back to end the story." Miles nodded slowly. "Then let's end it right." A few hours later, they returned to the hospital for a quiet meeting with the board. Evelyn was already there, poised and graceful as ever. She looked at Claire with genuine pride. "You've done something extraordinary. Donations tripled overnight. Your father's vision lives because you refused to let bitterness bury it." Claire smiled softly. "He built it for others. Now it finally belongs to them." Evelyn placed a folder on the table. "The board wants to name the Women's Recovery Program after you. The Claire Whitmore Initiative." Claire froze. "No," she said gently. "Name it after them? All the women who rebuilt themselves. I'm just one of them." Evelyn's eyes softened. "You really have become your father's daughter." When the meeting ended, Claire walked through the new hospital wing one last time. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and hope. Nurses passed with calm urgency. Children's laughter echoed faintly from the pediatric floor. Every sound felt like a heartbeat. She stopped by the plaque again, tracing her father's name with her fingertips. "We made it, Dad," she whispered, "and this time no one can take it away." That evening, she, Miles, and Ethan took one final walk through Central Park. The city glowed under amber streetlights. Ethan squealed with joy at every pigeon and horse carriage. Miles glanced at her. "So what happens now?" Claire smiled at the question. "We go home. We plant more trees, paint more mornings, and teach them how to live without fear." "You make it sound easy," he teased. "It's not," she said softly. "But it's honest, and that's enough." They reached the Bethesda fountain. Claire stopped, watching the angel statue glimmer in the fading light. She remembered the woman who once stood in the cold Manhattan rain, abandoned and broken. That woman was gone. The one standing here now carried both her scars and her peace. Miles touched her shoulder gently. "You know, if your story were a book, this would be the last page." Claire turned to him with a small, knowing smile. "Maybe? But some stories don't end. They just change chapters." He smiled back. "Then here's to the next one." As they left the park, a light drizzle began to fall. Soft, cleansing, the kind that made everything shimmer. Claire lifted Ethan into her arms, his tiny hands clutching her hair. "You see that?" she whispered. "That's what new beginnings feel like." Later that night, from the train window heading back to Vermont, she watched Manhattan fade into the horizon. A skyline once filled with pain, now simply beautiful. Miles sat beside her, Ethan asleep in his arms. Claire leaned her head on his shoulder, whispering, "We're finally home." And as the train carried them toward the life they had rebuilt from ashes, the world that once watched her break now watched her rise. Not as a victim, not as a name, but as a legacy of light. So, the story has come to an end. But hey, my dear friends, you're still here, aren't you? If you've stayed with me until this moment, then maybe something in Claire's journey touched your heart too. Maybe you've been through a storm of your own, betrayal, loss, or the kind of silence that feels endless. What this story reminds us is simple but powerful. We can rise again. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Every heartbreak, every fall is not punishment. It's preparation. Claire didn't win because life suddenly became kind to her. She won because she learned to be kind to herself. That's the real healing. Not revenge, not noise, but peace. So if you're walking through something heavy right now, remember, pain doesn't define you, it refines you. Keep going. Keep breathing. Your light is already forming in the dark. And if this story spoke to your heart, give it a like, share it with someone who needs hope tonight, and subscribe to our channel. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we remind each other that healing is possible.